Okay, here's the two things that we're going to use to coat this tank with. The best stuff is 3M fuel-proof coating. It's an aviation product. I don't have it, so we're going to try West System epoxy. This is a flexible epoxy, which I think is better for gas tanks because they do move. And we're going to thin it. This stuff tends to be a little runny when you mix it. We're going to thin it with acetone, so it's somewhere between the consistency of maple syrup and water, somewhere in between, so it will flow, and we can slosh it around the inside of this tank and get a coating on all sides of the tank and then drain it out. We're not going to try to use too much excess because it's very difficult to drain out the last amounts of any liquid out of this tank. So what we're going to do is try to use the minimum amount and not count on really draining anything out. Just continue to slosh it around until everything's coating. And if there's a buildup on the bottom of the tank that's thicker than elsewhere, we don't really care. So this is experimental. As far as I'm concerned, I wasn't really happy with the results that I got here. This partly has to do with the kind of steel and the coating that's in here. It rusted very quickly after it was etched. Just overnight, drying it, it got a thin coating of rust on the inside again. And if I had to do this over again, I would do it with the Evapo-rust. This is very tight, but you know, it doesn't look nice and shiny like it did right after it was etched. And this is just overnight. We stopped about 3 o'clock or 3:30 yesterday, and it's you know, 10 or 11 o'clock this morning. It's had the heat lamp on it, been about 85 degrees all night. It's just warm to the touch. So this is what we got. We're going to have to go ahead with it this way anyway because I need to use the tank. So we're going to use the epoxy. So we've used the second best method, which is the acid etch and neutralize, and what to me is an experimental method of using epoxy resin to coat this thing. We know that all the over-the-counter stuff that you can buy, including POR, is not ethanol resistant. And a lot of guys have failures because they don't degrease the tank properly and they can't get a good bond. They think the acid will remove the grease, and of course it won't. You have to remove the acid with solvent, dry it, then use the acid to remove all the rust, and dry it again, and then coat it. You cannot get a proper bond if there's any grease and oil or gasoline residue and gum remaining on the metal. You have to get that all off. I probably have not done that as well as I should have, so this may fail anyway, but I did slosh some acetone around in there, and we just got to do it because I have to have this generator working. The power can go out anytime and we don't want to lose our food. So here we go. Anyway, the process is going to be to, and the other thing I should have done is I should have heated this epoxy overnight so that it was, you know, at least 70 or 80 degrees. It's been out here in the shop where it's not heated and it's cold. So I'm going to have to try to do something to warm it some, keep the tank warm, and keep the tank warm after I coat it so that the reaction time won't be too slow. Okay, this is really funky today. I'd say anything that you could do wrong, we're going to do wrong today because we just have to get this son of a bitch going. I'm taking a piece of plastic cut from that garbage can. I just was trying to dry it with this lamp and melted it. But I'm going to use that to keep the epoxy out of this this cap. I'm going to want to put the cap in here while I slosh the stuff around, but I don't want epoxy to get in the cap and foul up its springs or its vent or any of that stuff. So I got a piece of blue tape on here to cover this this hole where the fuel gauge goes, because it comes off a lot easier than the Gorilla Tape. And I've got a pen twisted in the threads of the petcock hole, because I don't want epoxy to fill those threads. So everything is funky. It is raining here today, so the humidity is high, which is just the wrong thing for working with epoxy. The temperature is low, again not the ideal for epoxy, but I need to have this generator tank working tomorrow. Here in California, the power goes out a lot in the wintertime, especially when there's storms, and we need the generator to keep our refrigerator going so we don't lose our groceries. I keep some bottles of water frozen in the freezer and put them in the refrigerator to help, but the fridge got full with the Thanksgiving turkey, or the freezer did, so I'm down to one bottle. So usually when I do epoxy, I have two sets of measuring spoons, one for hardener and one for resin. You can see that they're all marked so that they don't get mixed up. But I'm going to use such a large quantity of this stuff that I'm going to, I think I'm going to mix a half a bottle of each, and each of these bottles has got a line right about the halfway point. So I'm just going to empty each of these into this can. I cleaned this can with some acetone and paper towel. So I'm just going to mix that much, a half a bottle of each one of these. These are, I don't know, 118 milliliters. What the hell is that? Let's see, that's a tenth of a liter. So together there's 2/10 of a liter. 0.2 times 32 ounces is 6 ounces. So there's 3 or 4 ounces in each one of these things. I'm going to use half, and then I'm going to mix it with acetone to thin it. This is how I make penetrating epoxy to work with rotted wood. But in this case, it's going to make it liquefied so that it'll swirl around in here, and I'm hoping I make enough. If I don't make enough, I'll have to make another batch. I got one glove. See if I can dry out another glove so I can keep the epoxy off my hands. You really don't want this crap on your skin. This cumulative epoxy exposure can make you really sick. I don't use it much, and I try to keep it off my skin, but it happens. And so it just, this is a very poor glove, but we'll do the best we can. Moisture is not your friend when you're working with epoxy, so that's another thing to think about. Anyway, we're going to do the best we can. Of course, I cut this finger yesterday. I didn't realize that the inner edge of this lip in this tank was sharp, and I was cleaning in there without the glove on and cut my finger. I just bled like a pig. And anyway, we'll just do the best we can. This is the wrong glove. That's a left-hand glove, or a right-hand glove. I need a left hand. So anyway, like I said, anything that can go wrong has already gone wrong. So we'll see if this works. despite all the shortcomings, the coldness, the dampness, the humidity, the residual rust tooth on the tank, the lack of heat to help the epoxy reaction go off. I don't know, that may work in our favor because we've got to slosh it around quite a bit. We'll just see how it goes. So a year from now I'll make another video. We'll take the gas out of the tank and we'll see how the coating is holding up. The one other thing I have to have is something to drain this epoxy into, if I have enough to drain out, and I guess I'll use this greasy tub. Alright, screw it. He said delicately. And ooh, you have to keep these things straight. One of these is hardener and one of them is resin, and if you mix them up it's going to seal itself in there and set the whole batch off. So, like I said, this stuff is not well, I overshot. I got about 2/3 of it. But I guess I just don't care. That's the hardener. This is the resin. So, let's see, where are we? Golly, we're almost at the halfway line. We actually are just about at the halfway point. So that worked out okay. This stuff slowly goes down to the bottom of the bottle and the level comes back up, so we're very close here. That's actually right on the line. They're both right on the line, so we did perfectly. I don't know how that happened. That's an accident. So now we got the hardener and the resin in there. Now we're going to mix it up. Standard epoxy deal. Nothing magic here, except I wish it was warmer. This stuff is very cold, which means that it will be slower to set up, which may help us. You can actually see this stuff when it mixes. It changes color. Part of that may be air that's getting entrained in there when you stir it, but I think it's also the reaction between the hardener and the resin. So when you get it right, it's uniform in color, and luckily the hardener is one color and the resin is another, so you can see if there's any hardener that's not mixed in pretty easily. Okay, that's a pretty good glob of epoxy right there. And now we're going to thin it enough so that it can be distributed around the inside of the tank. And we're going to use acetone to do that. I guess it's possible to thin epoxy with alcohol, but I don't know what kind of alcohol, and I've never done it because I've only used acetone. So I've used a lot of acetone here. More volume of acetone than there was epoxy and hardener. So right now it's very watery. I might have used too much, but also it takes a long time to get it in solution and thoroughly mixed up. Yeah, I'm sure I've used too much acetone, but it's going to evaporate anyway and leave the resin behind. That's what it does. That's the whole thing. This is very watery, much waterier than I'd anticipated, and don't like that very much. I want it to be more like the consistency of somewhere between maple syrup and I don't know, maple syrup, I guess. But this is pretty watery, and we really don't want undissolved solids in here. I could put in a measured amount, additional amount of hardener and resin. I could put in another tablespoon of each. I think I will. This is very, very watery. So, get the spoon marked hardener, and I'm going to put in a tablespoon of hardener, which is a fair amount, quite a lot. And now I get the resin measuring spoon and put in a similar amount of resin. I overshot with the acetone, not being careful today, like I should be. Probably shouldn't have put that spoon directly in there, but I did. What I'm going to do now is take my stick, oops, wrong end of the stick, and get as much resin out of the spoon as I can. And do the same thing on the, well, that was the hardener, and do the same thing with the resin. And this is really funky. This is just as funky as possibly could be. reason I didn't want this too thin is because I wanted the coating thickness to be as thick as I could get it in there. Consistent with the stuff being liquid enough to disperse itself around. But I think what we'll do is we've probably got enough here to do 2 coats. So we'll pour some of this in, we'll swirl it all around, we'll give it some time to harden up a little bit, but because it's all mixed at one time, it's going to go more or less go off at the same time, and then we'll put a second coating in there. Yeah, that's going to work. Yeah, I like that. Even if we didn't put any more in there, this is going to work. I mean, the stuff is epoxy. If you get a thorough and complete coat, even if it's very thin, it's going to do the job. So yeah, I'm already happy with this. I don't know if you can see in there, but you can see it's coating everything very nicely. And oops, forgot to put the cap on. So now I'm going to put this piece of plastic on here and put the cap on so that I can do this. Because the tanks are never completely full all the time, when there's condensation of moisture in there, it's going to condense on the underside of the top. And that's going to be the first thing that rusts and the thing that rusts the most. So you've got to cover that. You've got to coat that well. The bottom of the tank has always got some fuel, and it's going to rust when it's uncovered, or if there's a big concentration of ethanol in there or other shit. Coating gets damaged, but you really have to look at the top side of the tank that you can't see. You really can only feel it. If you've got I could have put a mirror in here, or if you've got one of those little USB cameras on a flexible stock, you can put it in there and inspect the whole damn thing. And I've got one, but I just can't lay my hands on it, and I didn't think, I've got the mirror right here, but I didn't think to put it in there. So, you know, like I said, anything that can go wrong will go wrong, and is going wrong today. So there you go. Alright, this has got a good coating on everything in there. There's not a whole lot of excess liquid in there. You can see some slopping around. Get all the seams, and get all of the underside of the top of the tank. The tank is built with some you know, a low spot here to collect some crud. And I suppose that's where the excess epoxy will go unless we drain it out. It's like we used almost everything. There's just a teaspoon left in the can. And I think I should have put down a, what do you call it, a garbage, not a garbage bag, but a grocery bag here to collect the spillage. I guess the only thing we can do is pull the pan out and see if any, there's the excess. Very good. Well, we got a good bit of that stuff that we put in there back. I don't know what to think now, except that we've got everything in there coated, and that's all you can ask for. I think we'll take this cap and clean it with acetone, because I'd like this to remain a functional cap and not be fucked up. You know that there's a vent hole in this cap, and it's got to work or the whole generator won't run. It'll starve for fuel. And then where will you be? Nowhere. Trying to figure out why the generator isn't working, and it won't be the carburetor, it'll be the fact that you've stupidly sealed up the vent hole. Okay. Now I slapped epoxy along the top here. Doesn't really matter, but you can wipe it up now with acetone. No, it won't do the paint any favors, but it won't be the first time we've wiped the paint with acetone here. Well, I'm going to clean up this mess, and then I'm going to take the camera over and shine it inside the tank so you can see what we've got. Oh, there's a plastic bag that these measuring spoons live in. They get sticky and kind of funky, but as long as you keep them clean, they'll be there when you need them. So there's that. Now I've gotten epoxy all over the place, so I've got to clean it up. I should have put down a some of these things you just have to throw away. This mixing stick is, and set it here and let it harden up and use it again, or throw it away. All right, those go back in the drawer. Knock over a few things. Now here I have a whole lot of penetrating epoxy, and I don't know what to do with it. It's $15 or $20 worth of waste there, I guess. The only conceivable thing to do is to try to put another layer in here, but I don't see any point. As far as I can tell, it's got enough. And I think what I'm going to do now is try to clean up this incredible epoxy mess that I never should have made. I have a rubber sheet, basically stuff called chloralloy, on my workbench, precisely because you can clean it with solvents and stuff, and it keeps the stuff, oil or epoxy or glue or paint or whatever I smear around here from soaking into the wood. And usually I'll just take some simple green and water and clean it up now and then. It's gotten very, very dirty. But when you do something really awful like get epoxy all over it, you can take solvent and clean it up, and it'll be okay. So now this stuff is going to set up in a matter of time, no matter what I do. I don't know what to do with it. You really can't save it. So if I had some rotted wood somewhere, I guess I could use it to harden the wood up, but I don't. So here's my bottles of stuff, and we can see that I've used pretty equal amounts, maybe slightly more hardener than resin, but that's okay, especially in this application. It will set up and go off and do what it's supposed to do. I think I'm going to take this blue tape off of here before it becomes epoxied on and can never get it off. And so there's really nothing to do now except keep this warm. It's going to take a while because the acetone has to evaporate, and the epoxy has to set up, and because it's not that warm, it's going to take a while. But by tomorrow, 24 hours from now, it should be set up good and hard, and we'll be able to put the petcock back in it, and the fuel gauge, and put gasoline in it, and give it the smoke test. So that epoxy, that comes from West Marine, and I think that package of epoxy costs around $30. I use it for a lot of things because it's flexible, and a lot of things that want to get repaired that you know, vibrate or need some flexibility. It's good stuff to use. And a gas tank is on a generator or a motorcycle certainly a prime example of something that's going to be flexing mechanically for a variety of reasons. Temperature, engine vibration, just being manhandled around, just life. So there we go. I don't know what else to do now. I sure wish I had a use for this epoxy. I made way too much of it, thinned it way too much, but live and lurch, right? I don't know. There's nearly nothing to do but set it aside. Yeah, maybe I'll get another reflector bulb and put it on here. This is an LED bulb up here, doesn't really make any heat. And that's it. So like I said, everything that can go wrong did go wrong, and we'll see whether, despite everything not being optimal, not the humidity, not the temperature, not anything, we'll see whether this holds up over time. I believe it will. It's all got to do with whether or not, how ethanol resistant epoxy is, and I believe it is, well, once it's hardened. So we'll see. In the meantime, I'm going to find a picture of the 3M fuel-proof coating and include it in this video, and also the Evapo-rust, I guess. If I had this to do this again, I certainly would use Evapo-rust and not the acid. No question about that. And I know that the 3M fuel-proof coating is foolproof. It will work. It's an aviation product, but it's about $125 for, I don't know, an 8-ounce or a 16-ounce can of the stuff. It'll last for years. You don't use much of it, but I just ran out of it and haven't bought any more. And you just can't go buy it off the shelf anymore. You got to order it because it is a high VOC thing. It's an industrial product, but it's the best. The epoxy, I believe, will work. It's over the counter. It's not that hard to do, as you saw. This is the first time I've ever tried to use epoxy this way, and so I made a bunch of mistakes. I mixed it too thin and made too much of it for this little tank, and didn't really make provisions for 2 coats. It would have been better to make a small batch, coat it, let it get tacky, mix a second batch and recoat it. That's the way you get higher thickness with epoxy. It doesn't like to stick to itself that well after it's cured, but when it's half cured, that's the time you can continue adding and building it up if you want a thicker film coating. I don't think a thick film coating is going to be that important here. I think this is going to work okay, and it looks very wet in there and very glossy. So once it's hardened, it should be real groovy. So there you go.